Welcome back, Salty Flock. If you were in my last live stream, you know I just added a flock member today. Shared her earlier, and now we're going to talk about If I Did It, the supposed confession from OJ Simpson 24 years after the death of Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown Simpson. What does he have to say about it? When was this actually written? When did the public get their hands on it? And why did it take so long? This is a banned book, or it was anyway. So, of course, I'm all over it. So, I'm going to give people a couple minutes to get in the room. So, I don't think this has, there we go. These out. There's another one. Letting people in the room here. There's another. And another. And last two. All right, baby, we're up, I think. Oh, wait, no, shoot. We're in the wrong address. Okay, somebody found me. They got in. It must be working. Hi, welcome back. Thanks for coming in. Oh, I don't think that. Let's update this. I just made an awesome little. Hey, welcome back, Joe. Tipton Mama has arrived. Nice. Edit video. I'm going to put up my cute little thumbnail because I have to. Okay, you guys, if you can, please like the video. Please like, and I just uploaded the new thumbnail, so folks will know what we're talking about if they're just arriving. We are talking about OJ Simpson and his book, If I Did It. So I have learned some incredibly fascinating. There, that's a little nicer. I've learned some fascinating facts about this classic case. This was considered the trial of the century. When I was just a kid, it lasted for a year. Every day, these guys were in court, televised. And it created an entire subculture. It almost created the true crime genre, which has been a wave, much like the Private Eye was back in the 40s, right? This idea of the person who will seek justice outside the institution. So anyway, what are you talking about, Joe Tipton? Entrails eater, huh? Tipton Mama, Goldman's family staying angry. Now let me ask you a question. What do you think about them fighting Nicole Brown on getting a portion of this book? And what do you think about them flopping on what's in it and going from making noise, suing, and banning the book, not because of the money, but because of the content and refusing to read it, to asking everyone to promote it and being angry that folks would not promote it and empathize with Nicole Brown? Because here's the thing, in this book, yes, the description of the ending of Ron Goldman is brutal, and nobody should have to see or read something like that about their loved one ever. But the person being trashed in here the entire time is Nicole Brown Simpson. She's the one that he's defaming and speaking for. It's her and her memory that he's really attacking in this. And I completely understand the Goldman's perspective that, hey, money was our only way to go after him. Okay, more power to you. I couldn't really see the justification on them fighting the Browns and how they handled themselves on some of those interviews and during that legal battle. I thought it was just absolutely brutal. Oh my gosh, we have Jem. Jem, do you mean to be calling in? Do you want to be added to the stage? I see you on video. I'm happy to add you to discuss this if you want. Do you want to be added? Yes, just nod yes or shake your head no. Yes? Okay. Jem is coming on. Do you have audio?
I do.
Can you turn on your audio? We have no sound.
You do.
I have no sound from you.
Let's see. Oh, okay.
Yeah, tipped him on. Thank you. He was a horrible person. And the people who really had a stake in not wanting this published, I was sick to my stomach the way he talked about Nicole. But you know what this book is? This book, Jem, can you, your audio is not up. I'm going to go take you off until you get your audio up, and then I'll put it back on.
Okay, no sound. I'm good with that.
Okay. So I welcome you guys to call in and come back on. If you got sound, come in and join this convo. So what this is a handbook to the mind of an abusive person and of an abusive man. I want to just go on the record and say, I don't believe masculinity is toxic. Okay. You can hear her? Oh, let's add her back. I can't hear her, Jem. Okay, you're back on. Can you try talking?
Hi there.
You can hear her? Just a moment. I cannot hear her. How odd.
It's okay if you can't hear me.
I gotcha. Wait. Ah. Yeah. Oh no, I hope she comes back. Yeah, and I'm not for just calling people narcissists, but he shows us his mind and he justifies every behavior and every action. Uh-oh, what happened? Everybody dropped. What happened? Tipton Mama, if you're here, it absolutely shows us a peek into the mind of the obsessive stalker. And that's what he was. And that's what he admits to being. He just explains it away. So Joe Tipton's here. Joe, Tipton Mama disappeared. I don't know if you can tell. What is the title? Gathering Voices, welcome. Okay, you guys are here. I don't know why it's not showing me how many people are in here. It's weird. I have no idea. The title is If I Did It, Confessions of the Killer. Now, OJ Simpson had chosen a photo of him standing in the courtroom holding the gloves, wearing the gloves. And that's the copy of the book that got banned. And then the Goldmans picked this. And they kind of won, because they won the civil trial, the ability to call it Confessions of the Killer and add that title on it. How does one gather voices? Okay, I'm getting text messages, but just to let you guys know, I can't really watch the text messages while I'm on here. So I'm going to have to reply afterward. Cool. All right. So I'll check all those after when it's done. So this is just going to be sort of an introduction to this part one, and I think I'm probably going to go over it and outline the whole thing, because this story is fascinating, you guys. So it starts with a pretty long introduction, and the introduction is by the Goldman family. And I found myself making a lot of notes on this because of how hard they worked to justify their actions and how angry they even came off in the introduction. I was like, whoa, this is years later, and these people are rabid. And then they reframe kind of what they did to the Goldmans I'm sorry, to the Browns, and they barely justify it. I felt like that was ugly. So the part of this that I think really starts to get interesting. I agree with this. This is something I love that the Browns said, and they are just back to working. They were not willing to consider it before it was their money, right? But they do say, if one woman can see herself as Nicole and get out of the situation before she is killed, then we will have done our part. Fred Goldman said that on the Oprah show. And as I found myself reading this, I thought he's describing things almost any woman would do with such venom, or many women would do with intense venom. And even looking back, he has so much contempt in the way he talks about her throughout the entire story of their relationship. And he uses her attempts to improve herself as justifications to demonize her. So this girl was, I think, 18, if I understand right. It was her 18th birthday when she met OJ Simpson. She was a waitress at a restaurant, and the same day that he met her, his current wife, who he was working on things with, had told him that she was pregnant and that things probably weren't working, but he was still pursuing that relationship. He goes to a restaurant, or texts anyway. So he goes to a restaurant and she's waiting the tables, and he's like, how cute. Okay. Yes, I'll definitely contact you after, but I am live, so I'll need to do that after. Sorry, it's incredibly distracting. Okay, so it's kind of hard to find places where they're not complaining, and it's hard to find value where the moral of the story is not positivity; it's just more complaining. So I have problems with it, but right now they're complaining about Oprah and her sympathy toward Nicole Brown. Tipton Mama says, let me see if I can pin the comments. Here we go. I'm going to start pinning. Okay, I figured it out. Tipton Mama says he felt so much like he held some part of the blame for his son's death, perhaps like she knew what OJ was capable of and let him walk into it. She being the mother? Are we talking about Goran Goldman's mother? One of the things that I noted here is that lack of control and regaining control was the main theme for the Goldmans. That seems to be how they processed their trauma, and they talk about it a lot, to the point that I wrote, control is a main theme for the Goldmans. Now, that is a normal way for some people to process extreme trauma, acute trauma. Like Tipton Mama says here, oh, she being Nicole. That's victim blaming. We could easily see that makes them more dislikable to me, because we could also talk about how maybe Ron was doing things that he possibly shouldn't have done. Like he wasn't in the cleanest of situations, according to some people. Now, personally, when I read this, I was thinking, cheating. Why was the mass media reporting that he did this because she was cheating, because their marriage was over. It was done. But she was, by all accounts, into some illicit substances and into a crowd that was not a safe crowd. And it's suggested, that that he was part of that crowd, right? Who knows? But I think like anyone in a situation like this, like she tried to take responsibility. She tried to take the blame and think, if I could just be better, he wouldn't reject me. I think she had real abandonment issues, but she got with him when she was 17. So that's a story I was telling earlier. So he's with his wife, right? She says, I'm pregnant. They're on again, off again. He's admittedly cheating consistently. And he goes to a restaurant, meets her, sees his wife again, does husbandly duties, and then goes back and says, hey, I'm getting divorced. Will you get with me? And he gets with Nicole like that. Yeah. So I'm going to show more of Tipton Mama's comments here. They were incredibly upset with Nicole for it. Yes, it's victim blaming, but they were also victims. And it is incredibly difficult to lose a child. Yes. Yes. I still can't get on the side of somebody who is only feeling for their own role as a victim and cannot be kind to another victim or generous. I just can't find it likable. I feel for their pain. I empathize with them as victims, but I can't get into their headspace. It's too bitter for me. It's a little too bitter, and it's too much blaming everyone else. Yeah. Okay, so the next points I have here. They were holding on to this idea that OJ Simpson took away all of their control in their lives, that he, shifted them onto another path. And he kept saying, I'll never work a day in my life if it's to pay toward this debt. So they were so angry. It was like a wound that just would not close. But working in law, right? Working for a law firm, there's a certain mentality of a client who feels entitled, and they just ring of that to me. I would never want these people for a client, just being real. Yeah, okay. Devil's advocate here. We can say that about anyone. I even get into the mind of killers here and say why they do what they do. It's very easy for me to, I think, understand the Goldmans, and that anger is a defense for grief. I understand that, so angry at everyone and the need to blame everyone to make sense of the situation. But blame doesn't always help you make sense of the situation, not muddy, messy ones like this. So here we go. Where are we? So when the book first came out, there was a woman named Judith Reagan, and she was a head honcho at Fox. And if I get this right, they must be Penguin Publishing. It's a Maine publishing. I'm not sure if it's Penguin. I took some notes here. But they are the same group. So Fox Entertainment owns the TV station, and they own the publishing company. So that was the dual group. You do the interview and you do the book, or no deal. So they were so angry that they got Judith Reagan fired. They ended up talking to Murdoch I think, who pulled the book and agreed to ban it and pulled it from all the shelves. They refused to read it, and they called it a manual for murder. And then I believe they went on the Dr. Phil show, who publicly endorsed the book as a confession. Now, Dr. Phil's very commercial. I've never been woohoo, Dr. Phil. However, I actually think he's an incredibly intelligent, incredibly skilled man. He uses that skill to be, commercial success. This guy knows behavior, and that's why he makes such, great attention-grabbing, kitschy pieces. I've watched some of his interviews on really serious cases, and this guy knows how to interrogate. He really does. And he knows behavior, and he read this thing when no one would read it at the time. There was a boycott on reading it. So, people who were interviewing the Browns and the Goldmans were like, nope, didn't read it, not going to, won't. And they weren't educating themselves on what's in this. So, and then here comes me willing to read and open anything, right? So, my thought on the Goldmans here and their quest is that I wrote, everyone has a personal tragedy. Everyone has one. And it's easier to get on the side of somebody who's empathizing with others instead of, pushing everyone else's feelings down and saying, mine are the only ones that are valid. They were very lazy interviewers, and it was a lot of the handlers, according to the Goldman, saying, I'm not even going to ask these people to read it. No way. Right? Because it was the thing to do. It was trendy at the time. So look, I get it. They got a judgment. They needed to collect. This was the way to do it. But I think that they were not decent when it came to, the need to victim blame the other victims in this case. So the next thing, and this is the one that was like, whoa, okay, whoa. If I stopped and wrote all this up, I would never get it to you. So I just have to go through it like this. What this is the actual story. So I will touch on the prologue, which is written by the ghostwriter. And this ghostwriter is a very respected ghostwriter in his field. He wrote OJ Simpson's book. He recorded it. He got him to sign and do the corrections and sign off that it was his own version. And there is no reason to believe that he's lying about it. He has a very respected career. After OJ signed off on this book and it was eventually released, well, actually it was before it was for the first release, before the first pull. And he said, oh, I didn't write that. The ghostwriter just made that up. I didn't say that. And then later when they put pressure saying, here's a contract and you are not getting the money unless you fess up and stop lying about it, he did the interview and he admitted that he wrote it. But it took him stages to admit even that, to own writing it. So this ghostwriter gives us a really vivid impression of what it was like working with OJ and, writing all this stuff down and keeping a log. And he goes into this idea of, is it going to be fiction or nonfiction? Like, what is this going to be classified as? Because if you believe it's a confession, it's nonfiction. If you believe it's just a hypothesis, and then it's fiction. So it's not in the fiction section. I'll tell you that. It was not in the fiction section. Maybe every bookstore decides on its own. I don't know. But OJ said to the ghostwriter right after the book was done, quote, actually he said it about the ghostwriter. He said, quote, when I saw what that ghostwriter wrote, I said, maybe you did it, because they're saying that chapter contains things only the killer would know. It's really lame. This guy, when you read the way he, it's powerful. I was gripped by this book. And the ghostwriter justifies it by saying, look, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a reporter in this country who, given the opportunity to sit down and take a confession from OJ Simpson, no matter how oblique, would have refused to do so. Yeah, I actually went in with a neutral perspective, Tipton Mama, and I became convinced by just through statement analysis of how he's talking, and just looking at the way that he rationalizes and describes. I have a hard time believing that this is not real, right? It's about what my instincts say. He couches his confession. This is again the ghostwriter, and his name is I'll get this for you. It's at the end of the prologue. Pablo F. Fenjeves, Fenjeves. I don't know if I said that right, but he's LA based, and he only does nonfiction. He doesn't do fiction. Interesting. So he said he couches his confession in a "this is how I would have done it" mode. Police often suggest this themselves as a prelude to an actual confession. Okay, I want to talk about this for a minute. This is where I'm going to get kind of excited. So the most effective interrogation techniques where they have broken a lot of murderers is through suggesting a softened way that they did it. So, for example, planting in their mind a way that they could confess without being a terrible person, like an out, a way to make it justifiable. So in the example of Chris Watts, who has been convicted and we know murdered his wife, Shanann Watts, and their 3 children, 1 unborn, right? And during the interrogation, this really skilled interrogator, it's on video, I can share it with you if you want, and do the whole body language statement analysis for you. But they say to him, maybe you killed your wife because she did something to the kids. And they didn't believe that. They knew it wasn't true. But their goal was just to get him to make the first admission and give him a way to make it more palatable. So they suggested this to him, and then they sent his dad in to talk to him to bolster this claim. And then next thing you know, he was like, yes, I did do it because I came in, I went crazy, and I saw that she had killed the kids, so I killed her. And then they could show to him proof of the timing and when he killed the kids before, the evidence that they had, it came to be that she did not hurt the children, he did. And he was getting desperate because he failed the lie detector test. So he was trying to find a way to, admit to it without admitting. And just through principles of psychology, we know people need to confess. It's hard to have a thought in your mind and a second made up story that's always running through your head at the same time. And when you're busy telling a made up story, your mind goes to the thing that you're trying to hide. And some of those behaviors show, and we call that leaking. This is a psychological concept. So this is a common interrogation technique for people to go in and go, yeah, but you okay, so you did it, but you're not a bad person. You did it because of this justifiable reason, right? I want to help you. So that's exactly the psychology that he uses. The whole, well, if I did it, it was for these reasons. And he builds up the whole way to it. But yeah, that's classic psychology and confession, is suggesting a way that they might have done the crime without being a horrible person. They put psychological distancing for the person they're interrogating and actually being friendly to them, not attacking and not being argumentative. Those are the least effective interrogations. So we know that that's psychology. We know that that's how the mind works. So as I read this book, I see where he built this for himself, right? In great detail. In great detail of the little things, the guttural things that you just can't know if you didn't go through an extreme state, right? And reading this book taught me something I already knew, but it brought it home, is that the perpetrator of a horrible crime like this, in the process of what they do, they also completely traumatize themselves. So if you were to believe this as a confession, he was so traumatized by what he was doing. Yeah, you've got to read it, Tipton. He was so traumatized by his own action out of fury that he dissociated. He blacked out and came back and was like, that wasn't real. That was disconnected from the rest of my life. I can absolutely shut it off behind a door and say, it wasn't real. It wasn't me. It wasn't me who did it, not the me that's talking to you. It was the other me. And so in interrogations, they use this concept of the other me, this other person who did this thing that's not you, because you would never. Right? And you've got to read it. He walks through his trauma. This guy was fucked up through every one of these steps, but he was in fight or flight. And it, it's crazy when he describes the night and how he survived it, I got some more messages coming up. Yeah, Jack, thanks for coming in. Yeah, that's the one. Hope you can see the replay, I guess. Thanks for being here. Definitely catch the replay. Okay, so guys, your comments are welcome. It was a frenzy of rage. Absolutely. This was not a pre-planned, it was not a cold premeditated, right? This was hot. This was a fury of heat. So it even says here, the police often suggest this themselves as a prelude to an actual confession, right? You had a great reason. So that's pre-confession behavior. So then we finally get to OJ's part. Shocking and gripping. Okay. And it reads like he would talk, for sure. Now, I'm going to read you the opening. Chapter 1. The luckiest guy in the world. I'm going to tell you a story you've never heard before, because no one knows the story the way I know it. It takes place on the night of June 12th, 1994, and it concerns the murder of my ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her young friend, Ronald Goldman. I want you to forget everything you think you know about that night, because I know the facts better than anyone. I know the players. I've seen the evidence. I've heard the theories. And of course, I've read all the stories. And I can no longer tell fact from fiction. Oh, I missed a spot. And of course, I've read all the stories that I did it, but don't know I did it. That I can no longer tell fact from fiction. Then I wake up in the middle of the night, consumed by guilt, screaming. Man, they even had me wondering, what if I did it? Well, sit back, people. The things I know and the things I believe, you can't even imagine. And I'm going to share them with you, because the story you know or think you know, that's not the story. Not even close. This is one story the whole world got wrong. Do you believe it? I believe it. I think he was rolling his eyes going, prosecution really messed up this theory. They haven't gotten this right at all. Oh. He says on the next page, I'm having a hard time knowing where to begin. Still, I've heard it said that all stories are basically love stories, and mine is no exception. This is a love story too, and like a lot of love stories, it doesn't have a happy ending. He's rebranding the whole thing as a love story. So he talks about the night in the summer of 1977 when he was married to his first wife, Marguerite. And oh my gosh, I forgot this bit. It was their 10th anniversary. This guy's a cheating dog in terms of lying to one partner and telling them he's working on it while he has no intention of working on it. And that drives them crazy. And then he doesn't acknowledge it. This guy he gaslights as he breathes, and he describes that. And this is a guy who doesn't know he's the asshole. That's the thing about this story. It's filled with villains. Like even some of the victims are villains, right? That's why this captivated the nation, because there's heroes and villains. Nicole was villainized. Ron was villainized. The family was villainized. Children who kept a connection with their father. And most of all, him, right? So Marguerite is having dinner with OJ on their 10th anniversary. And she tells him she's pregnant. He decides he needs to go out of town for the weekend to think at a cabin. And on his way, he stops at a restaurant. Let's see. The Daisy. He has breakfast at the Daisy, a couple of blocks away. And the waitress, quote, was a stunner. Blonde, slim, and bright-eyed with a smile that could knock a man over. Who are you? I asked. Nicole. Nicole what? Nicole Brown. How come I've never seen you before? I just started here, she said, laughing. She was from Dana Point, an hour south of Los Angeles, and she'd come up from the summer to make a few bucks. How old are you? I asked. Just turned 18 last month, she said, on May 19th. Screw was 18. He basically raised her. He wooed her into this life, and she grew very unhappy. So here's where it gets ugly, you guys. This is the ugly part. Let's see some comments here. Did I post this? Show. Here we go. Show. Okay. Tip to Mama. I think they got it very wrong and told it so long and such gruesome detail that he was able to lie and tell some bit of truth through it all. Yes, absolutely. He was able to conceal and redirect and just let them hang themselves in this mess of a trial that they held. Tip to Mama was babysat for someone who was friends with her being Nicole Brown Simpson. So I would just be livid if I was Nicole Brown's family. Her sister Denise is the one that fought against this. And granted, I do believe that this is a good lesson for women who might be in this kind of cycle. Because when I read this, I recognized myself in the past in this kind of cycle. It's not uncommon for some partners who are, people who are insecure to, instead of leaving an abusive relationship, to try to transform themselves in every possible way to be accepted by the person who's dismissing them and discarding them. And this guy is a classic narcissist. Okay? And I'm not quick to give that label to anyone, but he is not aware of anybody but himself. So here's his introduction to Nicole. I don't want to accidentally skip over the part where he justifies the way he talks about her. Okay. So she moved into his house. And then he says, she was happy, sort of. The fact is, we still weren't married, and I couldn't go a week without hearing about it. Didn't I love her? Didn't we have a future? Couldn't we have children now, while she was still young enough to enjoy them? These little discussions often ended in arguments, and I absolutely dreaded them. Nicole had a real temper on her. And I'd seen her get physical when she was angry, so sometimes I just left the house and waited for the storm to blow over. Then he describes the first incident, that big old incident with the bat where the police are called out, right? There was much ado made of this one. This is how he describes it. One night, this is early on, we're on page 6 of his confession, right? Okay, I think I'm just going to go through the first chapter because there's so much detail in this, and it'll just be something we pick up and go through again. Okay, so one night in 1984, we were in the middle of another argument, and I went outside to get away from her. There was a tetherball hanging from one of the trees and a baseball bat lying nearby. I picked up the bat and took a few hard swings at the ball. Nicole came out of the house and watched me for a few moments, still angry, glaring, and I crossed into the driveway, sat on the hood of her convertible Mercedes, and glared right back. I still had the bat in my hand, and I remember flipping it into the air and accidentally hitting one of the rims. You going to pay for that? She snapped. Yeah, I snapped back. And then I took the bat and whacked the hood. And I guess I'll pay for that, too, since it's my car. And since I pay for everything around here. She shook her head, disgusted with me, and went into the house. I wandered back into the yard and took a few more swings at the tetherball. It was crazy. Seemed all we did lately was argue. I was still jumping a paragraph ahead. I was still trying to make sense of this when a West Tech patrol car pulled up at the gate. Nicole came out of the house to meet it, and I realized it wasn't there by accident. The guy got out of the patrol car and addressed us from behind the gate. Folks having a problem here? He just hit my car, Nicole said, turned to look at me, still glaring, her arms folded across her chest. You want to file a complaint? Nicole was still glaring at me, but I could see she was feeling foolish. She turned to face the guy and apologized for summoning him. Then he got back into his patrol car and left. She was feeling foolish because he had a tantrum and hit her car with a bat. Okay, this is how he talks about her while she's pregnant. Throughout the entire pregnancy, the only big issue for her, not for me, was food. She became obsessed about her weight, and when her friends were around, she was vocal about it. A woman doesn't need to gain more than 24 pounds in the course of 9 months, she'd say, repeating it tirelessly. I guess she thought she was a big pregnancy expert or something, having read all those books. But things didn't turn out exactly as she planned. She gained twice that, if not more, and pretty soon decided to stop weighing herself altogether. That was a relief, to be honest. I had no problem with her weight. My kid was in there. I thought my kid deserved a nice big home. So then he skips to the birth of their first child, Sydney Brooke. And he says she was a terrific mother, and it got to be a pain in the ass, quite frankly. I couldn't get her to leave the house. So through this whole period, he's bitching about her wanting to stay home and care for the kids. And if you'll remember, the whole problem later was that he was calling her a bad mother. It's what led to this violence, right? He's over there screaming at her about what kind of a parent she is, impugning her character. But she's a great mom. She won't leave the house, and she won't go party with him. What a pain in the ass, right? He's partying. He's out at nightclubs. He is out doing all the things. He's having affairs, and his trophy wife is not on his arm. Yeah. Wow, right? So she would get out of the shower, look at herself in the mirror, and burst into tears. So don't look in the mirror, I'd say. That's not what I need to hear, she'd holler. You know what? I'm sorry I said anything, but you're the one that's having a problem with your weight, not me. Does he not realize he's an asshole when he tells his story? Like, I'm trying to figure out, does he realize he sounds like an asshole? Because I don't think he does. I think he's used to talking with the boys who are like, yeah, what a bitch. So, years later, he found out, typical pig bitching about his needs not being met because it's all about him. It really is all about him to an extreme in this. So he tells another story, another big DV story, I should say, DV story, domestic, right? But he precedes it with a story that discredits the ultimate story. He rewrites it, reframes it. At least he tries, but it doesn't work for me. It feels awkward. There's plot holes. And we're still, by the way, we're still in the first chapter. So I'm going to go, I don't know how awake any of you are who's awake at this hour. But this is, we have like maybe 10 more pages to sort of gloss over on this. Okay, so New Year's Eve. First, he starts by saying, before he tells the story, he starts by saying that after the trial, it came out that Nicole had handwritten stories about what had happened to them, and she put them, what happened to her, and she had pictures taken of her injuries after some like serious events. And she left instructions that if anything happened to her, these documents and photos should be revealed. The incident and the allegations of the incidents go back to 1977 of all these handwritten notes that are in this safety deposit box. He says it was fiction. He says, look at this. The safe deposit box belonging to Nicole, and it contained numerous handwritten allegations of abuse dating back to 1977. In the notes, Nicole reportedly said all sorts of ugly things about me, that I constantly told her she was fat, that when she got pregnant with Justin, I said I didn't want another kid, that I once locked her in a wine closet during an argument, that I don't know what all else I did, but the list was endless, and all of it was fiction. And if it's true that those handwritten notes were from Nicole and that they were really found in her safe deposit box and that she really was making those allegations, well, I still say it's fiction. I still maintain that these incidents only existed in Nicole's mind. I honestly can't make any sense of it. I tried, though. Then he goes on to say, I don't know what she was thinking, frankly, but any of the things that happened, I wasn't around when they did. And yeah, I know it sounds cruel here on the page with Nicole gone and everything, unable to defend herself. But I said I would tell the truth, and that's what I intend to do. Do things get volatile from time to time? Yes. Do I regret it? Yes. I loved Nicole. She was the mother of my 2 kids, and the last thing I wanted was to hurt her. I only got truly physical with her once. Just once. And that was in 1989. And the whole world heard about it. So it's her version and his version. I think this is when the wine cellar incident probably happened, if it happened. Because the way he tells the story makes no sense. But you guys tell me. I want you to tell me. I wish I could see how many people are in here, but it doesn't tell me because I'm streaming on multiple platforms. I think it's just telling me who's logged into StreamYard and not who's watching YouTube. Anyway. So this is the story on New Year's Eve that ended in the craziness. Let me take you back. We're on page 11 now. This is only 11 pages in on all this crazy shit is happening. Only 11 here. All right. This is why we're called Salty After Dark, because I'm an insomniac and, you know, this is pretty salty. And this is not for the faint of heart or kids. So this is cool that we switched to this. Let me take you back. It was New Year's Eve. Nicole and I were at a party early in the evening at the home of a producer friend, hanging out with Marcus Allen, one of my old football buddies, and his girlfriend, Catherine. Marcus had bought some expensive earrings for Catherine and as a little New Year's present, and I guess Nicole got a little jealous. Catherine couldn't see what she was jealous about, though, since Nicole was dripping in diamonds of her own, and she spelled it out for her. Well, look what you got, girl. I don't know what Nicole was thinking, but for some reason she got it into her head that a pair of earrings, just like Catherine's, were waiting for her back at home. And of course, there were no earrings. We got home after the party. We were in bed making love, and suddenly Nicole sat up and looked at me. You have a little surprise for me? She said, smiling coyly. What surprise? Diamond earrings, maybe? I said, what earrings? I said, getting irritated. Like the ones Marcus got Catherine, she said. What the hell are you talking about? Well, Catherine said you bought a pair of earrings just like the ones she was wearing. Where are they? If you didn't get them from me, who'd you get them for? And I said, you're crazy. I didn't get nobody no damn earrings, and I'm not about to either. I'm sure that was the wrong thing to say, but I was angry, and my anger set her off. She took a swing at me, and I grabbed her arm and literally dragged her out of bed and pulled her toward the door. Where are the goddamn earrings? She hollered, still taking swings at me. There are no earrings, I snapped back. Liar, who'd you give the earrings to? I didn't give any goddamn earrings to anybody, I said. There are no earrings, so get out of here. I don't want you in my bedroom. That line, I don't want you in my bedroom, was much contested. She says that is not what he said. Now, does that sound like a natural speech? Doesn't sound natural to me. Nor does the story afterwards. He says, I pushed her into the corridor and locked her out, then went to bed still fuming. I don't know what the hell was going on with Nicole. She was becoming increasingly erratic. Most of the time she was a loving wife and a perfect mother, but it seemed like lately any little thing would set her off. To be honest, it worried me. There we were, 2 in the goddamn morning, and she was standing out in the corridor, banging on the door, hollering, as if she had turned into a whole different person. Finally, she gave up. I could hear her moving off. There were plenty of other bedrooms in the house. Nicole could sleep alone if she was going to be like that. I doubt she wanted to be sleeping with him at that moment. You go from making love to that. I don't know, maybe he's a volatile person. And, you know, he makes her sound like she's crazy, but it sounds to me like she believed that he was cheating and that he bought diamond earrings for someone else. And I don't know that it was irrational. And he just minimizes the whole event like, oh, crazy woman, right? I don't think that's what he said. She thought she was cheating on her. She was suspicious, and he makes her sound delusional. I think he's gaslighting her right now. And if he did act like that and get that angry and stonewall that way, well, that's not innocent behavior. Yeah, that's not innocent behavior. His version still makes him sound like an asshole, even if we believe all of it. Doesn't his version still, in fact, make him sound like an asshole? And by the way, guys, if you're in here, please like the video. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Take a second to like. I don't know how much time passed, he then says. Yeah, he is pretty crazy. He's very volatile. And he always has an explanation why his reality is the only real reality and everybody else is just inferior and stupid and skanky. All right. This is his view of the world. There's something up with his housekeeper. So this poor woman, Nicole, she's got OJ, who has a staff who bullies her, right? She's married to this guy, and his housekeeper is constantly into it with her and knows that no matter what happens, he's not going to take her side. Can you imagine being married to this guy and he antagonizes you with his staff in your own home? Doesn't he seem like he would grab it's classic flying monkey stuff, right? So she's living in her own home with a housekeeper that is just, something happened that night that he's not telling, because now he skips to this. He says he fell asleep in the bedroom. Yeah, right? There's so much I forgot about that this brings right to the front, and it's just like smacking you in the face. What? Right? What? If it's true, right? I don't know how much time passed because I dozed off. So he's telling us he went from making love to having this violent fight to falling asleep. Okay, maybe if he's high, drunk. I think there's probably substances involved in this whole incident. I must have dozed off, and suddenly she was at the door again. Only it wasn't her. It was the housekeeper, Michelle. Mr. Simpson, she said, trying to make herself heard through the door. You have to come out. The police are here. The police? What the hell? I pulled on a pair of pants and went downstairs and out the front door and found Nicole sitting in a patrol car that was parked in front of the house. What's going on? I asked. I saw Nicole, this is key. I saw Nicole trying to get out of the car, and I could hear the cops telling her to sit still. Michelle was standing right behind me, and she saw it too. Come on, Miss Nicole, she called out. Everything's going to be all right. Come back inside. Suddenly, Nicole was crying. My baby's in the house, she said. I want my baby back. Well, come on, I said. What's keeping you? Michelle tried to. Please come in the house, Miss Nicole. Everything's fine now. One of the cops turned to look at Michelle, scowling. Why don't you mind your own business? She said. Hey, I snapped. You got no right to talk to my housekeeper that way. She should mind her own business, he said. I couldn't believe the guy. He was parked in front of my property, talking shit to my housekeeper and telling me how to run my personal affairs. Man, you don't have the right to talk to either of us that way, I said. I was seriously pissed by this time, and I was seriously tired, and I didn't want to do anything stupid, so I turned to Michelle and let her back in the house. I figured Nicole would come back when she was good and ready, but Nicole didn't come back for several hours. She went down to the precinct with the cops. They took a statement from her and had her pose for pictures. It was 3 a.m. by then. She was drunk. She'd been crying. She was under fluorescent lights without any makeup. Ask me how bad she looked. Oh, yeah. I remember Lisa and Neil. Yeah. I was very invested in the trial. I was not allowed to watch it, but I snuck, as much as I could. So this is where he's talking about the pictures of her that night. I'm going to read that back to you again. She was crying. She was under the influence. She was under fluorescent lights without any makeup. Ask me how bad she looked. What a dick. He's talking about his wife, who's dead, who he's supposedly loving and mourning. Then they took her to the hospital, and the doctors gave her the once-over. In that report, which I only read much later, they noted there were bruises on her face and arm. That was about arms. That was about it. I could have told them about the bruises. The ones on her arms, I put them there. Her face, I didn't hit her, but it's possible she hurt herself while we were scuffling. Years later, during the murder trial, I found out that one of the officers who responded, blah, 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 that's not important. But callous, motherfucker. Callous, right? Even if he didn't kill her, he's a callous motherfucker. I get people can hate their exes. I get it. This woman is dead. I don't know. It comes up pretty fucked up. The way he has no empathy looking back and just trash talks someone for things that are relatively normal in marriages. Normal problems. All marriages have problems. So let's go back to that story. He's claiming he locked her out of the house, or out of the bedroom, not out of the house. And the next thing he knows, she's in the back of the police car and she's yelling about her baby being in the house and wanting her baby. Something is disconnected here. He was in the bedroom the whole time. Why is she freaking out about trying to get at her child? Did he lock her out of the bedroom, or did he lock her out of the house? Or did he lock her in the wine cellar? And what is Michelle's role in this? And if they heard the cop tell her she can't get out of the car, why are they taunting her and telling her to come in? Does it add up? Or are we seeing some real hostile dynamics that she's living with in this home? Thoughts on that? Really want to know your thoughts on that. I know it's a lot. It's heavy. It's so weird. The chat goes from it goes from pretty high to drops to nothing, and then it goes up again. And no idea what's going on. All right. So then he says, Nicole seemed to be concerned about the baby. Oh, let's go back. It's another passive aggressive, mean ass thing to do, and he's reframing it as though we can't tell it's mean. My baby's in the house. I want my baby back. We're going back to her being in the car. I wasn't stopping her. From where I was standing, the only thing keeping her from getting out of the patrol car and marching back into the house were the damn cops. Edwards also said I screamed at Nicole. I got 2 other women. I don't want that woman in my bed anymore. I don't remember saying anything about not wanting Nicole in my bed anymore. But that woman, it sure as hell was true. I didn't want her anywhere near me. The part of the 2 other women, though, Edwards got completely wrong. I was talking about 2 women being in the house, the nanny and the housekeeper, because Nicole seemed to be concerned about the baby, and I was just letting her know the baby was in good hands. Is that what he was doing? Or were they taunting her more when they knew she was not being allowed to get out of the police car? There is more to this story. He thinks we're stupid. I guess she got the message because she split and didn't come home till just before daybreak. When she walked through the front door, I looked at her and felt lousy. I never meant to hurt you, I said. I just wanted you out of the bedroom. I've got a headache, she said. You want me to take you to the hospital? No, it's probably just a hangover, she said. Taunting, yeah, real taunting. And then he says, the next day or the day after, I can't recall exactly, a detective came by to follow up with a few questions, and I walked the guy through it. I said I'd been drinking, that we'd both been drinking, and admitted that I'd become a little bit too physical. I should have exercised more self-control, I said. It's one of those things that happens in all relationships, he said, and I agreed with him. We'd been partying a little too hard. It was late. We weren't thinking clearly. But hey, nobody got hurt. Yada, yada. That's what the detective said to him. Is it really? OJ speaks on Nicole's behalf the entire time while minimizing and disparaging her. and giving her backward compliments at every turn. He's confessing to something, right? But he's minimizing and saying, well, he's trading guilt is actually the term. I'll take this guilt, but not that guilt. He says that he had a prenup with her, and that after that he felt so guilty, he said to her, if I'm ever physical like that with you again, I will tear up our prenuptial agreement. How noble. So yeah, as far as I was concerned, it was over. He's actually playing hero in that. I felt so bad. I went one better. I went out of my way above apologizing. Went out of my way to offer that if I beat her again, I'd tear up our prenup. Gosh, he's such a man. So, let's see. I'm going to stop at this page here. So he starts right now to give us a setup for later claiming that he was framed. This is the setup. He says, he talks about it's quite common for a woman to charge her husband or boyfriend with abuse only to call the police the next day and ask them to drop the charges. In fact, they were attempting to put a new law on the books that would give them the power to make charges stick, even if the complaint was withdrawn. And I guess what happened was someone at the LAPD decided that I would make the perfect poster boy for spousal abuse, a perfect high-profile launch for their campaign. Now he's the martyr, right? And wouldn't you know it, he said, they got lucky. The West Tech security guard who stopped by during one of the previous altercations in 1984 had since become a member of the LAPD. And both he and his fellow officers responded to a memo about Mark Furman, where Furman actually claimed he'd been at his house that night. So we got a bunch of dirty work by Furman, who's mucking up the evidence that they do have. In the end, he says, I was convicted of spousal abuse. I was put on probation, given a few hundred hours of community service, and ordered to pay a modest fine. I wasn't happy about it, but I didn't think the charges were worth fighting, and I regret it to this day. If you don't fight charges, they stick, and these stuck. Suddenly, I was a convicted wife beater. True. What he says is true. And then he follows it with, did I physically drag Nicole out of the bedroom and push her out into the hallway? Yes. Did I beat her? No. I never once raised my hand to her, never once. And if Nicole were alive today, she'd tell you the same thing. Really? She would. He just told us about how she was making complaints and documenting it. I don't really buy that she would tell us that. If she were alive today, I don't know. Might be a leap, but I don't really buy it. Okay, so the next thing he says was that when I think back on my marriage to Nicole, I guess I'd have to say that 1989 was the big turning point, but mostly for her. Me, I was the oblivious husband. He goes on about how he had no idea that she was cheating and doing drugs and being crazy because he was just a straight arrow man traveling for his job and golfing and coming back and being a good husband. So he says that in 1992, Nicole asked him for a separation. And he claims that he tried to get her back for a year. And it wasn't until he stopped trying to get her back that she wanted him back. And he describes her. Yeah, he does. He does say he did. And that he put bruises on. Yes. Although he says he did it by grabbing and squeezing, I think, not striking. I don't know. It's reminiscent of Amber Heard saying I did not punch you. You were not punched. I hit you with an open hand. You were slapped, right? The semantics of these things to downplay and minimize them. So I thought it was bullshit, and I told her so. She was adamant. She wanted to take a break from the marriage. Fine, I said, trying to keep emotion out of it. If you want a break, I'll give you a break, but there's no way in hell we're doing this without lawyers. So then they battled for a year or so, nasty custody, and then got back together for a short time. I think that we're at the end of the first chapter. And the next chapter is So Happy Together. And this is when he tells the story of the stuff where they got married. And when I read this, I got to tell you guys, I did not skip forward to the chapter, the murder chapter. I read it as I came along. And that is what I'm going to do with you guys. When it's done, you can skip episodes however you want. But this was chapter 1 of If I Did It, a breakdown of everything that, OJ's talking about. My opinions, love your opinions in the comments. Drop them in there. And next time we will do So Happy Together, the next chapter, where he sheds light on the phase of their not marriage, I'm sorry, their separation and getting subsequently back together. So Tipton Mama says, so idiotic. As if there's a big difference, especially when a big athletic guy like him is the one who hurts a petite female. You see, what I can't get over, even if it's true, I love your home the piano. Oh, thank you. I built this background myself. Pixel by pixel. Thank you, Gathering Voices. We go back to this one. Yeah, a petite female. So, my perspective, and I think the men that I respect in life would probably say, even if she did act out, she's extremely small and could be contained and you don't need to inflict bruises on, even if you did have to, contain it. But, I think most of the time a man claims he had to grab her, he had to hold her, he had to contain her. Really? Did he? I don't know. I don't think so. Unless somebody's attacking you, you don't need to contain their emotions. Okay, so that was chapter 1. And let's see, a couple of things. He weaponizes vague statements to work her up and then call her crazy. So that is a classic. Drop crazy making statements and then call the person crazy, right? So it's a real classic episode. And this was before sort of the psychology of narcissism was really unveiled, and it wasn't a theme in society as it is now and overdiagnosed. But this guy, I would say, deserves the diagnosis. He gives us a handbook for the mind of the narcissist who shows us what the discard process looks like. The devaluation and discard process he writes in detail in the story. And I think that is meaningful because the next stage is her trying to put the marriage back together and him completely discarding her efforts and playing mind games with her for the next year. And that is something that I recognized in my past. And I think many women could recognize themselves in her story. So next time, chapter 2. Thank you for joining me. Thanks, everybody who watches the replay. Appreciate you being here. It's really fun to hang out with you and share. Captain Mama, that was enjoyable. I want to say fun, but I don't want to minimize what this is all about. Yeah, I think it's too heavy not to make light when we go through the heavy because, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I do recommend reading the book because I recommend reading and digesting and understanding any banned book. I think when we label something, when we just ban something, we mystify it, right? Instead, I think the question is, why, what, how can we use this as an understanding, learning moment, right? A development moment. What can we get from this? So here we're going into the mind of a passion killer, right? Not somebody who just potentially, right? What I believe at this point. So I also want to go over the video of his interview. It's powerful. But maybe we'll save that for the end. Okay. Good night, everyone. Stay salty.